Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Down to Hell. We have a slightly unusual program this week. We haven't done this before because of scheduling conflicts. As you will observe, no Steph. I'm all on my own. Our own scheduling conflict meant she couldn't join us because we're not doing this live on the night that you're watching this, which will be Thursday. We're recording this a couple of days early because Howard Berger, who's one of our guests tonight, is a busy man. So Howard Berger and Marshall Julius are our guests tonight as the co-authors of what looks like a wonderful new book. David, you could put the front cover of the book up on screen so we can just take a look at it. Masters of Makeup Effects. It's slightly weird as well because we're going to be talking about a book which doesn't exist yet. Well, I mean, it exists, it's there, you just can't buy it yet. And I don't have a copy. I haven't actually looked at the book.
Nor do we have a copy yet.
Neither of you guys have a copy.
Right, not yet.
No, wow. So
we just have the PDF. But it's not the same as not being able to hold it, you know.
This
can't wait for that.
No, exactly. And it looks so damn gorgeous from what you sent me. It's quadruply frustrating. We can take that image down again. So it's published in September, right? But available.
It comes out. You can pre-order it now on Amazon and other book
usual outlets.
Yes, exactly. But it's officially releasing September 1st in the UK and then September 6th here in the United States.
Okay, well, I'm going to attempt to properly introduce you guys now, which in your case, Howard, is difficult to do in a hurry. If I get anything wrong or leave anything important out, do jump in on me. Howard Berger, who is one of those unusual human beings who not only lives and works in Los Angeles, but was born in Los Angeles. Almost everybody I ever knew in Los Angeles, a bit like people in London, Marshall. Of all the people I knew in London, almost nobody was born in London. They all came from elsewhere, like me, who was born in Liverpool. Howard was born in LA. It's one of the things that makes doing this in short form problematic. He is credited at Wikipedia with a small matter of more than 200 films off his own bat, which is not to mention apparently 400 plus film and TV projects as part of KNB. So prolific is, barely the word. Oscar winner for The Chronicles of Narnia, and also nominated for his work on Anthony Hopkins on Hitch, which we'll double back on later, and an Emmy winner for The Walking Dead as well. Howard has talked about his boyhood inspiration being the great famous monsters of Filmland magazine, and then in particular going to a science fiction convention in Los Angeles, where he heard his great hero Rick Baker speak, and that sealed the deal for him that this was what he was going to be doing with his life. And indeed, when he left school, he enrolled in Stan Winston's School of Makeup, where he worked on, little matter of things like Predator, Aliens, Pumpkinhead, and then moved on to work for Rick Baker, where he got particular prominence for his work on Harry and the Hendersons. Now, picture the scene, if you will. George Romero is making The Day of the Dead, and Tom Savini, who's been on this show previously, is overseeing the special makeup effects on that movie, and he's got his mate Greg and fellow Pittsburgher Greg Nicotero working with him on the makeup effects, and this other fella called Howard Berger turns up. So here's Tom Savini, Howard Berger, and Greg Nicotero all working together on George Romero's Day of the Dead. It is a little historical moment, I think, there. And then I think, if I'm right, Howard, it's on Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2 that you hook up with Robert Kurtzman.
Well, actually, I knew Bob before I met Greg. Okay. Because when I got hired to go work on Day of the Dead, I had to replace myself. I was working for John Buechler at the time, right. And Bob Kurtzman had been in for an interview, and I went, hold on, this guy can take my place. So I met Bob the day before I flew to Pittsburgh. and so, you know, Bob, Greg, and myself were roommates. We ended up all being roommates. We rented a house in Reseda. And so we all worked together. So, you know, when we did Evil Dead 2, we were working for Mark Shostrom. And that's kind of was the beginning of like, hey, maybe we should think about starting our own company. So, but that was like the next time that the three of us, the three amigos, were on a show together, and it just kind of started. Our brains started ticking from there about doing this ourselves.
And it kind of worked.
After 35 years, I'd say 35 years is fairly successful.
There was a point, as I think anyone watching will know, as I certainly was, there seemed to be a point there in the 90s where you could not go and see, late 80s, 90s, you could not go and see a film without seeing KNB's name. If it wasn't Industrial Light and Magic, it was KNB, it seemed at that point. So I think 1988 KNB is formed.
That's correct.
And you're obviously doing a lot of horror films, and you're racking up the numbers game, which means you start to sound like someone reading the football scores, proper football, as Marshall will appreciate. Soccer, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Halloween 5. Which I can match as well. I've got Prophecy 4, Pumpkinhead 3 on my resume as well. You get a breakout movie with Dances with Wolves because Kevin Costner has seen your work, and it seems like an unlikely break to be working on animatronic buffaloes of all things, but and then you're kind of moving further out into the mainstream with movies like Misery and Jurassic Park. You begin what turned out to be basically, I think, a career-long association with Tarantino, from Reservoir Dogs through Pulp Fiction, Dusk Till Dawn, Kill Bill, and on and on and on with him. And what did I miss out?
I was
trying to make it as short as I.
No, it's good. Listen. That's more than enough. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, you know, just growing up in LA was a great thing, and I had exposure to all my heroes like Stan Winston and Rick Baker and Greg Canham and Rob Bottin and, you know, Dick Smith on the East Coast. But yeah, no, it's been good, you know, and being partners with Greg Nicotero for so long, it's really been wonderful. And yeah, it's been awesome. And yeah, and to be clear, Kevin Costner did not see Nightmare 5 or whatever, but he did see a movie we did called Gross Anatomy, which was a Disney film with Matthew Modine, and there were cadavers in it. We did, and he said, well, if you guys can do, you know, human cadavers, you could probably do dead buffalo. And we're like, sure, why not? We didn't have a clue what we were doing, but that kind of like broke us out of the blood and guts world.
It seems like that's a recurring theme for you, the sure, why not?
Yeah.
How the fuck do we do this?
Yeah, it's still that way too. I'm always, they're like, well, what about that? I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. We do figure it out. But, you know, I mean, I think something in the world of the world of makeup effects is that, yeah, you know, we know we're good at what we do. We know how to design and do a makeup and all that, but really it's about innovation and figuring out how to get there. You know, we're all of us are asked the impossible, and then we have to make it a reality. And that's a lot of what we do in our job. And, you know, they don't have a clue. They just write it. We get it. And I'm like, okay, sounds good, you know? And very few filmmakers have a complete understanding or even a little understanding of how we go about it. So, you know, I mean, like you working with Clive Barker, Clive certainly being an artist has an understanding of how it all goes together, you know, and what the effort that each artist has to put into creating something and being innovative and coming up with something fresh and new, but yet work within the context of the film and on the actor, being considerate of the actor, of course, and, you know, the practicalities of the day-to-day, you know, grind of doing something like that. So it's
we'll circle back on the details of the actor later. But do effects, when they're presented to you on the stage, when on the page, I mean, when you get a script and you're looking, do they immediately kind of fall into two camps, one of which is, oh yeah, it's that, I know exactly how to do that, and okay, how the hell do we do that?
Yeah, no, it's both. It's always that, you know, and you try to figure it out. And nowadays, again, it seems like you're kind of producing the effects and the ideas and bringing it to the production and to the director and really kind of guiding them and like holding their hand. It's like, well, we can do it this way, and we can, you know, here are some scenarios, you know. So it's definitely all that. But it's fun, you know. But yeah, I'll read a script and I'm like, oh yeah, this could be this, this, and this. Or I'll, as you had stated, go, oh my, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure how we're going to do that. But again, we brainstorm. We have great creative people that work here at KNB, and Greg and I are always brainstorming, and yeah, it's how we figure it all out.
Well, and you mentioned Clive, and it's interesting, when Clive came to Hellraiser, he had never directed a movie before. Right. So but he, as you say, he has that artistic vision and he has the artist's eye. And I've talked a lot about how he was fortunate in that he got a great and very, very sympathetic DP in Robin Vidgeon, who made such a difference to the movie, but also the way that Clive and Bob Keane worked together. Bob Keane, who headed the image animation team, who did the special effects makeup on and the special effects generally on Hellraiser. And the Birth of Frank sequence, which is still, you know I'm partial, but it's still one of my favorite sequences in horror films, and certainly of the period when Frank is reborn out of the floorboards. That sequence was put together pretty much on the hoof by Clive and Bob. You know, a lot of grabbing bits of neglected body that Bob had lying around in a corner, and the application of you know, fake blood and wallpaper paste and imagination. And what I love about that is knowing that if they went back and did it again the following week, they might have come up with something similar, but it would have been different. You know, never the same twice. We'll touch again on the relationship between handmade special effects and CGI, but it's a point that I often make. You know, CGI is always the same. It's brilliant, it's wonderful, it's magnificent. It allows creators to do things that would have been impossible not that long ago. But it, you know, it just does what it does. You press go and it does it. Handmade effects are unpredictable, and out of the unpredictable comes magic and poetry.
Well, you know, and it all starts actually the written word. So I mean, you know, it's from the writer's mind, which, like Marshall, who's the writer, and you know, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with Marshall on this book, because He's a great wordsmith, and plus he was bugging the crap out of me for 15 years to write a book. And
long time.
Yeah, the pandemic seemed to like be the perfect opportunity, because I didn't have any excuse. Like, I got to be on set. I can't. Marshall, I can't. Marshall's like, you literally can't do anything for 5 months. So let's write a book. And that's where Marshall and I mean, we had known each other for 15 years, and we had met in London and just became friends. And then this came up, and I'm like, Marshall's like, let's write this book. And we had a bunch of ideas, and it's kind of how he came up with it. So, you know, but yeah, it all starts words, be it a book about makeup effects or be it monsters or what have you. You know, it's what sparks, it's planting that seed, and then it just germinates into something else and grows into something else.
Well, let me try and give a potted version of you, Marshall.
That'll be a lot easier, I should think.
You're a self-identified professional nerd. So
that's true. Yes,
I can accuse you of that without insulting you, because you call
not an insult at all.
Not at all. It's a wonderful thing to be, and the future belongs to nerds. We know that. You're like a proper old school journalist writer, seems to me, and hats off to you. I mean, you're a film critic, reviewer, feature writer, editor, copywriter. It feels like we'll write for food. I don't mean that pejoratively at all, but it's what you do.
Well, I think it's not easy to scrape a living as a writer, and I've been doing it since I was 18.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I started working for What's On in London magazine,
yes.
Which is actually when I met you, Doug, because you came out. You were the only person who I ever interviewed who actually who braved King's Cross, which isn't quite so bad now, but back in the day, it was a very ratty area.
Yeah. Where did we?
I think I interviewed you for Hellraiser 3.
3 was it? Or
yeah. I think it was for 3. In fact, you gave me a fantastic autograph, which I treasure. See, you got the greetings from hell, and you drew a little pin. I imagine that's something that you do on your repertoire, on your autograph repertoire. But
I still do.
I have this.
Yeah. Was actually.
And, we went to my favorite cafe, and we ate. I don't know. I probably tried to get you a burger or something. And we just sat there, and we talked about all the great movies you've done, and I was so impressed that you actually deigned to come to me and like have a proper chat like a real person. It was kind of one of my highlights, honestly, that day. It was really fun.
Oh well, thank God I was nice to you. It always kind of makes it makes the blood run cold a bit, you know. I met you at King's Cross, and you were a bastard.
You were a monster. Well, that would work as well, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know publicity off the back of the first film, and I just thought it would quietly go away, you know, even though there was talk about a remake while we were making the first film. I wasn't thinking about it. It was just head down and get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until Hellbound came along that I started, being allowed to speak for myself a bit. What's On in London? I saw that in your resume. It actually made me slightly misty-eyed for a moment. What's On in London?
That was a crazy magazine.
It was kind of a rival magazine to Time Out. That would be
I mean, technically it was a rival in the same way that an ant is a rival to a lion, maybe. But
yes.
The thing about What's On was that it was entirely funded by prostitution. I mean, that is the God's honest truth. There were a few pages right at the back that were just adverts, and it was mainly adverts with
kind of thing.
Well, King's Cross was a big area for ladies of the night and the afternoon and the morning,
Yeah, anytime.
They would stand by the cash points, like, and you take some money out of a hole in the wall, and they would say, "Oh, what you planning to do with that, sweetheart?" And you know, I would usually say, "Well, probably buy comics and toys." You know, I was not their demographic, but they didn't know.
Be careful when you talk about toys, because that could land you in an awful lot of.
Oh yes. No, that's true. But the girls, the women used to come into the accountant's office, and they used to like pull, 50 quid out of their bras. I mean, seriously. And that was how the magazine was funded. So actually, it gave us amazing freedom, because the owner of the magazine could not give a shit what we actually put in it. So when I started working there, they needed someone to do the classical music pages. And I like classical music, but I'm not a great,
like aficionado.
I'm not a great authority on that. So it's like, it didn't take long for them to say, okay, Marshall, you can write about movies. And, I was just always obsessed with film, grew up loving film and TV and the kind of nerdy arts, and was very lucky to land a job where I was allowed to do anything I want, and I pursued like all my heroes, and they just let me go and do it. Great writers and comic book artists and actors and directors, and for some reason What's On was, given access to everything. It was kind of little non-threatening magazine, and
I think
back in the day, it was wonderful.
We're all whores in our own way, We'll do anything for a bit of publicity. But you've also been a film critic for BBC Radio Oxford for forever, long time. You appear to have run Blockbuster's in-house magazine in the UK for 9 years, pretty single-handedly, as far as I can tell. You seem to
I did all of their online stuff as well. I wrote like millions of words for them, and then when they went out of business, they just shut their servers off, and it all just went. They just didn't give me any chance. But that's okay. I had everything saved. It's like recycling it. I did it for HMV a few years later. I just sold them all the same features. It was great.
Wonderful. I watched the documentary recently about the one surviving Blockbuster, which is wonderful. I forget where it is. Somewhere out west, northwest, somewhere, I think.
Is it? Or yeah, I think it might have closed actually, but yeah.
I think Oregon. Or Oregon.
Oregon, yeah. It all might be gone now, though, sadly.
Seems like a kind of a Portlandish thing to be.
Actually, it's still open.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Let's go to Oregon.
They have a TikTok. That's how I know.
Oh, it is? Well, that's cool.
I've got more movies than Blockbuster. Blockbuster.
And yours aren't edited. So you
can just come to my house and we can watch anything you like.
You're across the board. It's not just horror and fantasy with you. You are. There is no corner of the world of movies and popular culture that you haven't shone a spotlight on. It seems to me.
I am. I mean, obviously the sort of the nerdier end of the scale, the kind of action movies, horror movies, sci-fi, but comedies and dramas and art flicks. And, like my mom always said, she just likes anything that's good. She was a huge movie fan in her day. And I kind of got that from her. So she would, as she got older, for example, I grew up watching all the MGM musicals and old Bob Hope comedies, and I just saw the kind of value in it, and I just loved it. She introduced me told me who everybody was, told me a little bit about the directors, gave me a whole sense of it growing up. And so really from a very young age, I was just a fan. I was just a fan who kind of loved it and just had that kind of starlight in my eyes, really. And I remember when I showed my mum RoboCop, and I saw this film at the cinema, mum, like 4 times. You'll love it. It's just the greatest thing. And she watched it, and she was like all misty-eyed. She got the whole Frankenstein thing, and she was like totally into it. Then I think she told some of her friends who are a bit more traditional, and they're like, "You watched what?" And it's like, no, my mom, she liked RoboCop. I was always very impressed with her. So I tried to take that through my kind of career and as a fan, you know. And Howard's the same. Howard will, you know, watches everything. Howard watches, is an incredible film buff and has seen more films than anybody I know, you know. Somehow he manages to just watch a ton of films.
How do you do that? Because there's an awful lot of shit coming out all the time.
Yeah,
and you never stop working. I don't know how you.
Yeah, no, I find the time, Doug. It's important to me. I love movies. I mean, I'm more selective, you know, nowadays because there's so much content out there. But you know, I try to see everything I can, and I love going to the movies. Like going to the theater is really thrilling still, and you know, my wife and I will go and every weekend and see a movie or two, and you know, that's my point, to take a break and take a breath from working and enjoy sitting in a movie theater and with a mask on and watching a movie. So
yes.
Can I jump in and say, yes, Doug, that this is why Howard and I sort of kind of became friends in the first place, and so something that I've noticed, having interviewed lots of different people, you know, across the board, filmmakers, actors, writers, you know, musicians, and something that I find about makeup people in particular is that they are just as colossal nerds as me or any of my friends. That they grew up as fanboys themselves. You know, they grew up obsessed with, you know, like Howard with Planet of the Apes and you know, the Universal monsters, and so I find that, to mention my mum one more time, she used to say to me that, Marshall, you can go anywhere in the world, and if you see them wearing a Magen David, if you see that they're Jewish, then you've got like something in common with them. And she really pushed that on me. I went to a Jewish school, and honestly, I got to say, I did not get on with everybody I went to school with. I did not feel necessarily that we were completely bonded, although you've never been to a more sarcastic place with, you know, like 2,000 Jewish kids, basically, all just bitching moaning. But for me, I always felt I can go anywhere in the world. Yeah, and see like a Star Wars t-shirt or a Pinhead t-shirt, and then they're my people. And so this is how Howard and I first kind of bonded, because, you know, he's a huge movie nerd, and you know, we have the same references, and we grew up loving the same things. The difference is he became a great Oscar-winning makeup effects man, and I became a kind of hack journalist, but you know, happy with it.
Hardworking, I would call it, not hack exactly. You've also written action, the A to Z guide to action films, another genre.
I love action movies, and I wrote that in the early 90s when I was just completely, you know, back when before it was called old school.
Yeah.
So I got it here. It's my first book, and the editor, right? He put, of course, it's got RoboCop on the cover, and it's got one of my favorite quotes from Death Race 2000 on it. Sure, it's violent, but that's the way we love it. Violent, violent, violent. I love that quote. And then, so the editor, my editor there, and you see, Howard, editors are always bloody difficult. He put the title and the back cover is pink. And I've got no problem with pink. I like pink, but I said pink isn't really a sort of color that you associate with action. I said it should be like red, like blood red.
Yeah.
And he said, Marshall, it's not pink, it's fuchsia. And that was when I realized I was never really going to get on with editors.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, right, and that was it.
I have seen
different on our book, though.
I have seen the fuchsia of horror, and then also more recently, Geek, the vintage, the bumper quiz book,
featuring a question from Howard Berger and Tom Savini.
And you're trying to get a question out of me now.
I am, and you know, I will not stop asking you, Doug. So you have to give in.
Yes,
I'm tenacious.
Does it specifically have to be about Pinhead? Because I know nothing about Pinhead.
It does not have to specifically be about Pinhead.
Okay. All right. I'll find something at some point. I promise you. I promise you, without question.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that because, like, you know, I chased Howard for 15 years to write this book. I do not give up, you know, never give up, never surrender.
Right,
As,
start the clock. I'll see if I can hold out for longer than 15 years.
You won't, trust me.
So 15 years ago, 15 years ago, you said to
2006.
Howard, right, let's do a book. And Howard said, okay. And you said, you'll have to not work for 5 months. And Howard said,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose it was more like, I mean, I interviewed Howard for the Sunday Express for Narnia, and it was really fun. He made me up as Mr. Tumnus, and it was the last time I had hair. It was just a really fun hour. We talked, and I thought that Howard was sort of uncommonly candid and just very kind of honest about his job and the people he worked with, and we just got a really great interview out of him. And he made I don't know, it's not a mistake, but he did the very foolhardy thing. He gave me his email address, and so of course, you know, I was like in touch with him. It's like, can I interview you again for this or for that? And then we spoke on the phone a few times, and Howard told me that he'd always had this idea because he loved this book, Making a Monster. And it was something that was really important to him growing up and remains important to him, a book about makeup effects that he'll tell you about it. But he always wants to do something like on that with his friends. I mean, I remember, Howard, you saying years and years ago that you would love to just speak to everybody and get their stories. And I thought, well, that sounds like an amazing idea. I would love to do that. But then Howard, you know, is having this amazing career and, you know, working. I was like, Howard, you know, should we start writing the book? It's like, well, yeah, but I've got to do this, you know, Oscar-winning movie. I've got to, you know, work with Mark Wahlberg. I've got to, and it's like, what can I say? It's like, no, you have to stop. Which is why when the pandemic happened, it was like,
now you have no excuse.
True.
And I tell you, it was like, what, the lockdown was several months, but this book took us 2 years. Right. So Howard actually, and he worked so hard on it, you know, we both, you know, didn't stop, but Howard was doing, you know, a ton of stuff and working through COVID, which was crazy. And it just, we didn't stop. We spoke every day about the book and worked on every single
written by email and Zoom, presumably.
It was a lot of it, and because there's a time difference, I'm in LA and Marshall's in London, so there's a 8-hour time difference. I would get up at 4 a.m, and Marshall and I would hop on Zoom for 2 hours before I had to go to work, and we would work on the book almost every morning. And you know, and that's when I started back, because I started back to work in August of 2020 and then haven't stopped work since. So we started writing the book in April 2020 when the shutdown happened. And you know, at that point, those first 5 months were great, where we could talk anytime. But once I started work, I needed to be, of course, considerate of my schedule, but also be considerate of Marshall's schedule. And that's why I was willing to get up at like 4 and 5 in the morning and have a couple-hour meetings before I'd go to work, because then I know once I got to work, then that was that. There was no more talking about the book with Marshall, because the hours were getting later with him and I was deep into it. So it really is a labor of love. When they say that, it's a labor of love, and it's a book that I always dreamed about writing, and mostly, and listen, it has nothing to do with money or anything like that. I don't even care if I see a dime from this, and hopefully the publishers didn't hear that. But what interested me was talking to friends and colleagues and hearing their stories and compiling them in a book with you know, over 1,000 photos that had never been seen before. But we interviewed people I've known my entire career for the last 40 years, and I learned new things about everybody.
No, right.
And it was super, super cool. And that was really a giant thrill. And what was nice is the response was great, because I sent out a lot of emails, and the response was always absolutely. There was never a pause in terms of being interviewed, and you know, from makeup artists to directors to actors like yourself, and, you know, editors and VFX people. And, you know, we really kind of tried to cover the gamut. We ended up interviewing close to 70 people for this book. And, you know, and then Marshall had the fun of transcribing millions and millions of words and did a wonderful job at it. So it's really a matter of finding, and it does, you know this, it's finding a partner that will will tow the weight the same as you do. And there are very, very few people in my life who are willing to do that and have ever stepped up to the plate. And Marshall is probably my best collaborator I've ever had, next to Tammy Lane. So I don't want Tammy to get all mad, but you know, but no, it's
him off.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of writing this book, I mean, he at times was more like aggressive than I was, and I find myself extremely aggressive. And my wife always says, like, you have to do more things with Marshall, because he pushes you, and you don't need pushing, but he keeps pushing you to do more and more and more. And that's the type of personality you need to be involved with, you know, and I totally agree. So it's been a great collaboration. And I know we've got many, many more things to do, you know, be it another book, or maybe it's a movie script, or, you know, starting a magazine based on prostitution. You never know.
I got the business model for that. It's totally doable, you know, and yeah, you just have to keep all your money under a mattress, keep it safe. I have to say the same back to Howard, though, because
yes,
I've never. I mean, usually, you know, as a journalist, as a writer, you spend most of your time it's very solitary. You're sitting down, you know, at your keyboard. I've done it in offices, but mainly I've been freelance, doing it at home. And, you know, I can spend days and days outside of actually doing the interviews, just me and the computer. And it's you know, it's a bit lonely, you know, it's a bit, and I've never done anything really worked on a project like this that I have with Howard. And it's just the most fun and most satisfying thing, you know, I've ever done. Howard touched on how everybody said yes to him, for starters. I've never, as a journalist, said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out to 70 people and write a book. And then all those 70 people say, yeah, okay, when can we do it? Let's do it now. Everybody else was in lockdown. It was a great time. Everybody was free and available. But they all said yes to Howard, you know, because he's got so much great, you know, goodwill from the industry.
I thank you both for including me in the book. I honestly have no idea why I'm there in a book called Masters of Makeup. All I did was sit on my backside.
No.
Oh no, it was important to us to capture not just the experience of designing makeups and applying them, but also from people who are, you know, incredibly well known for having iconic makeups applied to them. You know, how does it feel? You know, what are the rigors of that? How does it change your personality? And you were so great. You gave us so many good stories, and you really offered some tremendous insights that I think people are going to be, you know, fascinated by. And Doug Jones, Carrie Jones, we got also some wonderful, you know, suit performers who gave so much to us for the book. But you're integral, Doug, honestly.
I mean, he's probably must have done more of this than any other actor, Doug Jones.
Probably. Certainly the most famous, I think.
Body of work is phenomenal, and yet he doesn't get mentioned a great deal, it seems to me. I mean, I was beyond furious that he didn't get a nomination for The Shape of Water. It's very rare that I behave when I'm watching the Oscars as though I'm watching Liverpool Football Club, who drive me to great passions of jumping up and down and shouting and dancing. And I was like that when The Shape of Water won the Oscar, because I really didn't think it would happen, and I was so thrilled, as I was angry when Pan's Labyrinth didn't win the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in the year that it lost to The Lives of Others, I think, which is a fine movie, but I wouldn't put it in the same bracket as Pan's Labyrinth, which I think is just a work of majesty, really. But I think it's an annoying thing that actors in those kinds of roles don't get recognition. When the Lord of the Rings trilogy came to an end, there were lots and lots of Oscar nominations and wins and awards across the board for lots of different things. But I think Ian McKellen won a BAFTA because, British. But I think I'm right in saying that not a single member of cast got any nomination.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
And I think
there's definitely a bias, isn't there, about actors in fantasy films, and it doesn't make sense.
No, and oh God, I'm having a senior moment. I worked with him as well. Oh Jesus, the actor who played Gollum,
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis. That was a groundbreaking performance. I mean, at that point, I don't think anybody had done a motion capture role where that kind of role where he was not going to be the end product. And not only provided the voice, but was there every day in his motion capture suit, working with the other actors, giving that performance. Groundbreaking performance, I thought, and I thought it was all wrong that he wasn't acknowledged for it, really. But and even out of makeup, the human leads, they were a band, weren't they? I think in Lord of the Rings, not acknowledged for their work either. I think it's just it's not right. I'm going to write a letter.
But it depends how I love the Oscars. I think that I think the Academy is a great institution, and they've done a lot to celebrate cinema. But like all institutions, it's run by human beings, and everybody has their interests, their likes, their dislikes, their prejudices. Not everybody can see every single film. People don't necessarily like change. So giving Andy Serkis a role, they're probably kind of worried what that means for themselves, for their own careers, and I think that the public voted by going to see those films in their millions and giving the film billions of dollars and pounds, and so yes, maybe they didn't get an Oscar here or there, although I think the Lord of the Rings generally did pretty well, but yes, definitely not for acting. But I think that many of the cast members became incredibly famous and beloved, and have had wonderful careers off the back of it. So I don't go to sleep worrying about kind of Viggo Mortensen not winning an Oscar for it or stuff. I think they've done okay. I think Andy Serkis made 1 or 2 movies since.
I believe he has. He's the boy's done okay, I think. I did The Cottage with him. I had a cough and a spit in that.
I love that film. I interviewed him for that.
Okay, it's a very funny film, hilarious script. I was angry villager.
And you were a great angry villager.
Thank you very much indeed. I hold it as a great achievement in my career. It was very funny actually, because I had a Rottweiler on a lead, and now it was get off my lawn kind of angry villager, and the dog was supposed to get aggressive and bark and growl and snarl on cue, and the handler said to me, I'm going to stand behind the camera and I'm going to give a signal. Now at that point he's going to pull hard on the lead and he's going to rise up and start barking and snarling. You'll be fine, you've nothing to worry about, just tighten your grip on the lead a bit more. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm a dog owner, I'm used to dogs, that's okay. So of course we action, and I see this hand behind the camera, and the dog went nothing, absolutely nothing. And we tried again, and the handler spoke sharply to the dog, and we probably did 6 or 7 takes, and the dog absolutely refused to do anything other than stand placidly by my side and pant quietly. So angry villager with not very angry dog. But let's start to dive into the book a bit. It looks, I mean, I wish I could get a hold of it and pick it up. It looks absolutely fucking gorgeous.
Thank you.
A big coffee table book, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cool. And you've started with a Hall of Fame, and I was asking you, Marshall, about who was in your Hall of Fame. And being a professional nerd, you thought I meant everybody who's in your Hall of Fame, your personal.
I have so many halls of fame, Doug, that I just wasn't sure which one you wanted me to go in. And then in the middle of the night, I thought, oh God, he obviously meant from the book.
One.
And it just takes me a while sometimes. I have my own senior moments now, Right. So it took me a while, but I got there, and I gave you the heads up on the things that we've included, and it is a dizzying number of things in our Hall of Fame, because it's not just great makeup movies, it's also individual great iconic makeups, and also these fantastic influential makeup artists who changed everything.
Is Lon Chaney Sr. the godfather?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we wouldn't be where we are today. I mean, I think, Dick Smith and Rick Baker and so many of us all looked up to Lon Chaney Sr. and were marveled at what he did, and I think, there was a movie called The Man of a Thousand Faces, and starring James Cagney, who actually is not a great Lon Chaney. His face is completely different, but it's such a great movie. And that's what really made me aware of Lon Chaney, because I saw the movie when I was a kid, and that's when I wanted to learn more and more about it. But I mean, Lon Chaney was a working actor, and he came from vaudeville. He came from the stage where you do your own makeup, as you know. And so he developed techniques that would then translate to film, and his Quasimodo and his Phantom.
I don't mean to interrupt you at all. I'll carry on in a moment. I just want to ask David if he'll at this point put the Chaney Nosferatu page from the book up on screen for us to look at while we're talking. Right. Sorry, Howard.
Oh yeah, okay. No, so I mean, Lon Chaney created so many great characters, like a Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo, and the Phantom, and of course London After Midnight, which I've never seen, but of course I love that makeup. It's a terrifying makeup, and you wonder what he put himself through. He was
looking at it's the Phantom of the Opera is on is on the page there, and it's one thing that's always struck me with Chaney is he is being very careful to be very precisely faithful to the original descriptions of the characters he played, where they came out of books. It's true with Quasimodo. He obviously went to Victor Hugo and didn't just think, oh, well, I'm creating a hunchback. And he has very much with Eric, where the description in the book is of a skull, and that's clearly what he's tried to reproduce here. But to pick up your point, Howard, you can see in that makeup how very theatrically based it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it's very theatrical, again, coming from the stage world, but also in all his characters. And again, this is him playing these. There's a tremendous amount of humanity. And if we look at all those characters, because I always feel monsters and creatures are victims of circumstance. And I don't think any of them are bad. It's just the situation they've been put in, So Quasimodo, which is one of my all-time favorite characters, be it the Lon Chaney version or the Charles Laughton version, which I love that movie to no end. you feel for those characters, you know, and that has to do with the, you know, the performance, and he knew how to perform in those makeups, and obviously perform, you know, in the silent era and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I think he really kind of started. I mean, there's also Cecil Holland who did a tremendous amount of makeup effects work, and
I found him when I was researching for my book, and I'll absolutely put my hand up and say at that point I'd never heard of him before.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, Cecil Holland was very prolific.
Kind of Chaney before Chaney, and
he was, yeah, he kind of was the first guy and led in Chaney. And you know, I think Chaney Chaney's so well known because of his movies are iconic, and Cecil Holland, I don't believe, was an actor, but he but Chaney was an actor and a makeup artist. And you know, listen, who better to be a monster than a makeup guy? You know, makeup artists, makeup effects guys make the best monsters, and we know it. It's in our blood, and we breathe it, and we live it. And you know, I mean, when I was a little kid, I spent probably a year as Dracula. I knocked out my teeth accidentally walking into a fire hydrant and not paying attention. I just had my canines. And my mom made me a vampire cape, and I wore the vampire cape for a year, and everybody in the neighborhood called me Dracula, you know. And then when I discovered Godzilla or King Kong, I mean, yes. you know, it takes you. I mean, Doug, you go to the conventions and you see 100 pinheads, you know, that's something, because it means it touched somebody. It touched people. That's their fantasy, to be able to go into another world, to leave their life behind and take on these personalities that they admire so much, and be a part of that community. And it's something, you know, Marshall and I have spoken a lot about it, especially being geeks and nerds that we are. And I say that proudly, by the way, that it's a community that is probably one of the most kind communities. You know, my wife went to the Comic-Con with me a number of years ago, and she said, everybody here is so nice, and they're all here for one common goal, which is to be a part of this universe. Like, no one's aggressive, no one's mean, no one's this, no one's that, no one's snarking. You know, I mean, everybody was there and lifts everybody up, no matter what they're wearing, what they're being, what the character. And that's what I feel like our genre is, our horror, science fiction, fantasy, and with us, makeup effects world is very similar. I mean, that's what we love. It's a universal, unconditional love amongst all of us, and anybody that partakes in this world. You know, I mean, it's a really fantastic place to be. You know, I love it. I think it's magical. So I think Doug just had enough and left.
Actually, I'll tell you what I just did was, you may have noticed, one of the things got a bit quieter. I just unplugged the fridge.
Oh, there you go.
Because it gets very noisy, and it was annoying the hell out of me. Well, I used to do the same thing when I was a kid. I've always loved Westerns, and I loved Westerns as a boy, and I had my cowboy suit, which was rather nice, and I had the holster and the two 6-shooters, you know, which we used to put what we used to call caps in them. And I used to drive my mother crazy, because after I watched a Western, I lived in my cowboy suit for days. And what upset her particularly was I insisted on eating my dinner using only a fork, because cowboys never used knives, and insisted on turning my chair back to front.
That's funny.
Because cowboys always sat on their chairs that way.
Sure.
Did you get a lot of beans, Doug? Did you do a lot of blazing saddles? I bet they had to crack a few windows open.
No, she didn't tailor the menu to my determination to be a cowboy for the rest of my life. No. So I'm going to ask David to put the image of Lon Chaney, the vampire from London After Midnight. As you touched on it, Howard, and it's the one makeup that I always come back to, and you always have to, I think, underline with Chaney that he designs makes, applies all of these makeups himself, and then gets up and does the performance. And with this makeup, you know, I think we know, like with Eric, a number of things of him putting cigar holders up his nostrils to extend the nostrils, and the gutta percha to pull the nose back and up, so it's like a skull's nose. This thing is off the charts. I mean, it's very simple in a lot of ways, because it's a lot of it is recognizably him. The false teeth, which he employed a lot as Quasimodo, and I wonder sometimes whether Eric's teeth aren't in fact Quasimodo's being recycled. These clearly aren't, and this is a vampire that doesn't only have sharpened canines. Every single tooth in his mouth is pointed. And then there's this, what's he doing here? Pulling.
Yeah, kind of like the Dr. Sardonicus kind of smile. It's like a permanent weird face.
I've read that he's got some kind of wire construction.
Yeah, it could be coming off dentures that just pull this back, you know. Sometimes we'll do like a hair lip or something, and there'll be a piece of wire that presses in the skin. But it's very possible it's that. I mean, we'll never know the magic tricks that he employed.
He just wouldn't talk about them.
He wouldn't talk about them. It was his character, you know, and I totally respect that, you know.
And the eyes.
Yeah, the eyes, whatever he did, like, you know, there's always, rumors of like putting something in, you know, to extend this. Who knows? I mean,
well, I've seen talk of contact lenses, but this is.
Yeah, I don't know.
At the time he was doing this, if that's true, they would have had to have been glass.
Oh yeah, definitely glass. Yeah, they were. If he put anything in his eyes, it was all glass.
But didn't he sometimes use egg membranes as well?
Yeah, I think like the
blind eye effect. Robert Englund mentions that in the book. Right. That I forget the movie, but that's to give himself kind of cataract.
Yeah, like the fogged eye.
So he just puts what, like egg whites?
Well, I think it's the peel, you know, not the egg whites, but the skin off of the egg, the membrane of the egg.
Yes.
Yeah, and just like used it as a soft contact lens. I mean, it's an organic material, and probably put it in his eye, and
And with Quasimodo, I know there's always a lot of debate about how heavy the hump was.
Yeah,
he was wearing, and it's been rumored that it was made out of plaster of Paris, which would have weighed an enormous amount.
Yeah.
And that he gave himself this kind of harness construction that was like a series of belts that meant he could tighten them such that he was physically pulling his body over one side. So he's not acting. Once he's got that in position.
Yeah.
And he's,
no, it's pretty amazing. But I mean, listen, we even
himself.
Yeah,
I mean, he must have had so many back issues.
I think he was in not great shape. So yeah, after that, I mean, but yeah, even nowadays, we have a lot of great actors that are in makeups, and I mean, I think one of the greatest, and since we're talking about it, is Gary Oldman, who goes the distance. Like the makeup for Hannibal, the
Mason Verger.
The Mason Verger makeup is unbelievable, and in the same lines as something Chaney would do with these heavy contact lenses and distorting his face and taping his nose up. And Greg Canham, who's a great makeup artist, who's in the book as well, did that makeup. And there's some really nice photos he gave us behind the scenes stuff that I'd never seen before. And it was Gary's idea to go the distance, because when Greg designed the makeup, he's like, it's going to be Gary Oldman. We, have to be careful. He probably doesn't want to go the thing. And Gary came and was like, no, go do whatever. Make this guy unbelievably hideous. So, and Gary's been in a tremendous amount of makeups and has really promoted that. It's used it as a tool. And that's always nice too. You have an actor who who works hand in hand with the makeup artist and helps develop the character. And, you know, I always say we bring 50% to the table and the actor takes it from there and then brings the character to life, you know, and ultimately it's the actor on screen, not me. And I have to trust that the actor will take what I've designed and created and spend hours and hours and hours applying, and that it will all work out great. And I've been very lucky with that. But, you know, it's a huge makeup artist actor collaboration. I mean, you know, Doug, working with, like, you know, all the guys from Image Engineering and so forth, and that had created, you know, Bob's team created Pinhead and all the other characters, and it is a partnership 100% when you're on set and in that trailer.
Yes, I've said it many times. In the first place, you know, people always ask me how long did the makeup take. It's the question I get asked more than any other. You know, and I say, well, early on, when everybody was feeling their way with it, Jeff Portas's original makeup 6-piece application, it was taking 5 or 6 hours, and it sped up to around 3 or 4. And everybody always, oh wow, it's amazing that you went through that you did, you know. And I'm very quick, because I'm very aware of it, to say, well, I didn't do anything. I just sat on a chair, you know, and drank coffee and listened to music and chatted away and made a nuisance of myself. And when I smoked back then, insisted on occasionally being let free to go and smoke a cigarette. But that it's the makeup guys who are doing the work, and they're on their feet for the entire time, usually with their backs bent over. And if, you know, if my application is going to take 4 hours, they're there well in advance of that, preparing and prepping everything. And they're on set with you all through the day. And it, you know, it gets annoying. One of the most annoying things is the constant poking and prodding. You know, and it's invasive of your space.
Yeah.
All the time someone coming right up here and looking at you. That's very unnerving. I remember my first couple of days on Hellraiser, it was, you know, nobody comes that close to you except your life partners, you know. And they're not looking at you. They're not looking you in the eye. They're looking at the corner of the eye to see if that edge is coming up, and being poked and prodded with brushes and hair dryers in your face and so on, all day long. And as I said in my book, they see you at the worst possible hours of the day and night, you know. They're going to see you in the wee small hours of the morning. They're going to see you exhausted. They're going to see you fed up. They're going to see you angry. They're going to see you exhilarated. They're going to see you, you know, possibly hungover. It's a close relationship.
Yeah. It's and that's why I always, you know, tell production, like, we're always first in, last out, as you've pointed out, and spend more time with the actor than any other person on the film crew, you know.
Yes.
And, you know, and on top of doing the application and doing the job we're paid for, then, you know, we're there also to make sure you guys are okay and looking out for you and checking on you, and like, you need this, can I get you this, you need a fan, you need a, you know, a drink, you need a this, you know. So, but yeah, no, it's a partnership for sure. But it's one of the partnerships I love when I'm working on a movie, is, you know, getting to work with the actors. You know, I'm you know, doing something now that I really, really love, and I'm working with an actor who was very skeptical of the process, and now he's good with it. And it was all because of past experiences and, you know, a little bit of post-traumatic stress syndrome, but he's great now and he's enjoying it and funny. And because he's being taken care of in a different way than he was before. But you know, that's again going back to this book. That's a common story, you know, amongst all of the people we interviewed is how their relationships were with this actor or that actor, or you know, what was like to work with Michael Jackson, or what was it like to work with this person, or David Naughton, or you know, Bruce Campbell, or what have you. And
Rourke, you know, it doesn't always. Sometimes it's a little bit more combative than other times. We've got some great war stories.
Oh yeah. Kenny, a makeup artist named Kenny Diaz. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Well, it's like Kenny. It was great and incredibly candid, and told us the story about his whole relationship. It's the longest story in the book, and it's just I didn't want to, you know, we just didn't want to cut it down. It was like, this is too damn good. And it starts with on The Deer Hunter, wasn't it? That was the first film they worked on, and then you know, they kind of bonded on that, and then they start working together on was it Homeboy, the boxing movie?
Yeah, and this is a makeup artist named Kenny Diaz, and the actor is Mickey Rourke.
Yes.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes, and how he talk about how Mickey Rourke found it useful to find the character in the very early days of every film, and how it was very important to him to get the right look, and how he found the character via the makeup and the costume. But then after he'd found the character, after the first week or so, he really just couldn't be bothered with it, and then he had to be chased, and then so Kenny would chase him and literally have to follow him around and do all that, not just touch the makeup on, but actually put it on, like chase him and get it on him. And then they started to become, you know, sort of physical, like Mickey Rourke would push him away, and then they started to get a bit more pushy with each other, and then it escalates to the point when Mickey Rourke is sort of like, Kenny said he had a bad back, he had sciatica, and he came in one day and Mickey Rourke says, "Oh, you're out partying," and they just had a big argument, and Mickey Rourke shoved him over when he had this bad back. He shoved him to the ground, and Kenny got up and, you know, screamed in pain and rage and ran off and got a stick and put a powder puff on it and like attacked him with it, said, you know, "Here's your makeup," and that's not even the end of the story.
Wow.
But at the other end of the scale, because that's not near the stories are that sane, we do have some really crazy stories. But you've got people like Ben Foster and Jamie Kelman, who are two great artists. You've got a wonderful actor who just inhabits, you know, a variety of different character roles, and you've got Jamie Kelman, who's just the lovely, just such a great and lovely guy, and so talented, and they so respect each other. And we've got the stories from both of them about how, you know, that really kind of reinforce the partnership and what it's like when your actor, you know, I mean, Howard said that you know, Ben Foster even wants to become a makeup artist. He was that interested, and he had a little makeup kit when he was younger, and so he was always fascinated by the process. And he respects what Jamie does. Jamie respects what he does, and so we've sort of captured that in the book, and that's lovely. And Doug Jones talking all about how, you know, a makeup artist is not just a makeup artist. It's not just like you turn up, you put the makeup on, and you're done, because he's you've got to follow him around all day. You've got to make sure that he's you know, that he's taken care of, and not just that his makeup looks good, like maybe, you know, you kind of keep an eye on his, you know, mental health almost. You're making sure that he's fed and comfortable, and it's a very intense and close relationship. And I learned so much about that, things that I'd never really thought about. And this is just what I want to say, that what makes this book special, if I can say that, is that Howard is, you know, nobody knows the business better than somebody who's in it, and Howard knows the business, I mean, you know, better than anybody I've ever, you know, kind of known. And Howard, the questions that he asked his friends, who answered them candidly without any kind of guards up. So it wasn't like they were talking to a journalist. We got stuff that I could never have gotten myself, and Howard asked questions that would never have occurred to me to ask. You know, it was like, this book is special because Howard really made it special. I just gotta I can't stress that enough. Really, we've got stuff in there that I don't think has ever been covered in another book before.
I don't know whether you got any examples of, and I don't know that I've necessarily heard of any, beyond obvious things that I know there are some actors who got as far as the life cast and couldn't go any further because they suddenly discover in a big way that they're very claustrophobic. The moment someone tries to enclose their head in plaster to take a life cast, but that's not happening.
We've got a Dick Tracy story, haven't we, Howard, about that? Who was it that disappeared?
James Caan.
Was it just like, oh, I didn't know that there was, casting, and then it's like, I'll just got to make a phone call to my agent, and then you hear the cartoon noise of the door slamming, and then
I was
getting in the car and
Val Kilmer on Batman. He couldn't handle the live cast, and they had to resort to just taking 1,000 measurements of different bits of his head and trying to make the cowl fit, which it's never going to fit as well as a plastic. I think I should try isolation tanks, because I always rather looked forward to having my live casts done. I rather enjoyed that thing.
Yeah, no, so you're right, Doug. Some people will love it. I mean, I've only had a few head casts that were difficult to do, but I've also cured, I feel like we here at KNB have cured a lot of actors of claustrophobia, and they will come in terrified and like, I can't do this, and we walk them through it and we do it, and afterwards they are great to go. I've never had somebody come out of it and go, oh my God, I was freaking out. It's all good afterwards, and sometimes we have to talk actors that get in their own heads when you're about to do a big makeup, and you just take the time with it. I think I've learned that, just being there for them and talking to them, and I've even had an actor who was having a tough time with it, and I said, let's just go on a walk. We left the trailer and walked around the lot and talked, and came back, and we did a portion at a time and a portion, and took breaks, and I just let production know that don't rush us, because that's not going to make things worse, and they respected that. And at the end of the day, the actor was great, and he did like 10 to 12 days in a big giant makeup and never had another problem. So it's how you deal with things.
And it's also the carrying it through the day. And as I say, the whole process of the application of the makeup I rather enjoyed. That was never really a problem. But it's a weird thing, and I became a nomad, and I found, talking to Robert Englund, that he did exactly the same thing. I was always very aware that I wasn't very good at being on my own when I had the pinhead makeup on, because you can't really settle.
Right.
You can't lie down because pins.
Got pins in your head.
There was a point I realized that I could kind of balance the back of my head because there are pins there, and I could get away with that. But I didn't really enjoy being in my own company. So I'd go and seek out other people's company, but I didn't really like being in other people's company. And I felt as though they didn't like being in my company, because people are not reacting to you. They're reacting to this makeup. And I just, all the time, I wanted to be able to just lift this off, put it down over there and say, right, you fuck off. I'm just going to be me now for the next 2 hours while they shoot the scene I'm not in, or they relight, or whatever it is. And then when they tell me they're ready, I'm quite happy to just pick that head up, put it on again, and flick the switches. And so I became a nomad. I wandered and prowled and wandered, and people kept asking me, are you okay? And one of the questions I came to really, really, really hate was, are you okay?
Yeah.
Partly because I got asked it 1,000 times a day, and partly because part of the answer was, suppose I'm not okay.
Mhm.
What are you going to do about it? I'll say I'm okay, and I am okay, and I always was okay. But there were times when, it starts to fuck with your head. There's no question. I don't know whether you've ever experienced actors who were really struggling during the day. The working, being in front of the camera,
Right.
acting, you don't even think about it. You're not aware of the makeup. It's intrinsic to what you're doing.
Mhm.
It was never that. That was never ever an issue. It was the hours of having to wander around with this shit on your head
Mhm.
that begins to put you in odd mental places, I think.
Well, absolutely, it does. It's a psychological trip, and again, it's like, some actors will think about it and that will cause an issue, and then some won't, and it's just part of the gig, and then of course there comes the end of the day for removal, and I know most actors don't like having it. I mean, they're happy when it's off, but the process of removal is annoying, and I hate taking makeups off. I really dislike it. I don't know why.
I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
One, and
Because you like having the makeup on. You don't like having the makeup removed.
it's a weird thing, and I'm going to ask David to put Tim Curry's Darkness from Legend. Oh,
Right.
Jesus fucking Christ! And I told you this story, and it's in the book, but I'll share it again now. That when I was making Nightbreed, which came after Hellraiser and Hellbound, but again was a full prosthetic makeup performance, made and applied by Mark Coulier. Wonderful guy. It's a wonderful makeup, the Lylesburg makeup. He's now a double Oscar, I believe. So my routine was almost exactly the same as it had been on Hellbound. We shot both movies at Pinewood Studios. Thank God I lived in North London, so I was only about half an hour away. But my routine was, generally speaking, set my alarm for 3 a.m. Car would arrive at 3:30 a.m. and deliver me to Pinewood at 4 a.m. to begin the makeup process, to be, ready first up at the top of the day. And my driver said, as we were making our way around the North Circular Road, he said, at that Tim Curry sitting right where you're sitting now, when he was doing that. I said, oh yeah, Legend, yes, yeah. He said, yeah. I remember first couple of days, he's very bright, very chirpy, very talkative, very funny, lots of joking. We talked all the way, and he said, and then as the days went by, he got quieter and quieter, and by the end of the film, he said he was kind of slumped in the corner of the seat and not saying anything. And I remember watching the faces of the PAs and so forth who would be there to greet me. And Nightbreed was a busy movie. Something like I saw that Rob Bottin mentioned with Legend, because there were so many damn makeups going on. It was bedlam backstage on some mornings on Nightbreed, because there were so many prosthetic makeups being applied, and they all take time and they all take hands. And again, as the days went by and rolled into weeks, I noticed this gray pallor that starts to wash over people's faces, who were bright-eyed and suntanned in the early days of the shoot. Now, Tim, I think, was a 6-hour makeup, and because it was head and body makeup. and issues with carrying the horns. But I wanted to come to this question of makeup removal, because I read that he had to lie in a hot bath for an hour at the end of the day in order to dissolve the adhesives. And I can't. My mind is boggling at that. I mean,
I mean, we interviewed Nick Dudman and Lois Burwell, who applied that makeup for Legend. So, Rob Bottin designed the makeup, and he did the first test with Vince Prentice. And then Nick and Lois took over under the watchful eye of Peter Rob King, who was the makeup department head on the show. And there's a lot of different stories, not all great, but it was a tough thing. It's if you stand back, I think no matter the torment and the torture, you stand back and you look at that movie and you look at that character, and I think it's one of the greatest makeups ever done, ever created.
It's astonishing.
I think yeah,
it's so beautiful.
Beautiful. That and Meg Meckelbones, which was played by Bob Picardo, another amazing, outstanding, probably torturous, those big white contact lenses, and but it was, I think a lot happened in the beginning, and then Nick and Lois started to suss things out. I'm not sure about the sitting in a bathtub, but they never said anything about that. But things had to be redesigned. Absolutely. Nick came up with a whole process, rebuilt the whole process of for the holding the horns, because Tim just couldn't hold the weight. It was too much. And Nick rebuilt something, and it was a very long, arduous prosthetic makeup, and put him through a lot.
Just the sheer time factor.
Yeah.
Ordinarily we'll talk about working a 12-hour day on a movie set. Now that assumes, let's say you're playing a character in t-shirt and jeans, and you work a 12-hour day. So, you arrive, you grab some breakfast, you're 5 minutes in makeup, you're 5 minutes in wardrobe, and you're on set. And you can work all day. And when wrap is called, you go to your trailer, you take off your jeans and t-shirt and put on your jeans and t-shirt and go home. Right. But with this kind of thing, so Tim Curry has taken an hour to get to work, 6 hours in the makeup chair. By the time he gets to go on stage, to go on set and go in front of the camera and work, he's probably already been there for 8-10 hours. He's already put in a full working day in terms of length of time before he's even started doing any work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Lois was telling us, wasn't she? Lois Burwell was telling us that, it was incredibly grueling physically and exhausting for Tim, but, they Nick and Lois had to apply multiple makeups, and so when Tim went off the stage, they were working and creating, and sometimes they were asked to the director would come up with, we want a mummy, and it was like, well, that's not in the script. It's like, yeah, but we want a mummy today. So she would just figure out how to do a mummy, and they were just creating characters and not stopping. And she said that by the time that they'd taken Tim's makeup off, they'd actually been working 20 hours. They had time. A few times they said they didn't even go home. It literally, they just slept a couple hours, in the makeup trailer, and then they had to, wake up and start again. They were working insane hours.
It's a kind of insanity, isn't it? Now, you said, Howard, you don't like doing makeup removals.
Yeah, I don't know why. I want to just go home.
Yeah.
Just like you do.
Well, I've said that. Yeah. So when you hear that's a wrap, and every visions of cold beers are dancing in your head, you have another hour in the makeup chair.
Yes, exactly. And I think what it is I'm always first in, last out. So it's like I do the I'm always there. I never leave an actor in makeup. I would never do that. I never have. And you know, it's my least favorite part of the job is removal. And I just sometimes it's a bear to get off, and I'm just like, oh, this is going to take forever. Sometimes it comes off nice and easy. You know, if we're doing silicone, it's way easier than pulling off foam rubber. But yeah, I mean, you know, but then again, I feel like I have a duty and obligation to my actor. So I would never be like, I'm going to split and he's going to clean you up. I don't agree with that. I stand by my actor 1,000%. You know, as long as he's there, I'm there. So
it happened to me a couple of times, but only because, you know, there was an absolutely solid reason why they had to be somewhere else, and I accepted. I actually took to taking it off myself, and that was partly, I think, because I know my pain tolerance. They use Prosaid. Me, and I've seen actors who've had prosthetic makeup applied with Prosaid. I've seen them sit down in a chair at the end of the day and peel it off.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Boom, like that. That shit sticks to me like a second skin. It's absurd. They took diluting it 50% water, and it made not a scrap of difference. So the process is, I mean, because I would have a bald cap put on first over my hair, which I had back in the day. So people understand that the bald cap is there, and then the makeup is being glued to your face and head, just glued in place everywhere. So the only bit that wasn't glued to me was the top of my head. So it'd break through the makeup and break through the ball cap and rip the top open, which we used to refer to the Kennedy moment. And then you just start with oil and brushes to break down the adhesive and peel it back bit by bit. And if you go too fast, it hurts. And if you go too fast, you're in danger of lifting your skin, of actually tearing your
absolutely skin.
I got to it was always for me the point, and that stuff smelled disgusting, and I got to the point where it would be hanging off my eyebrows and I would feel physically sick. But if I was doing it myself, I could control it myself, and I felt
it's like you know, being a passenger in a car on a windy road opposed to driving. So I'm good driving a windy road, but if I'm a passenger, I don't feel so good. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I mean, you know, when I used to do Robert Englund's makeup for Freddie, I was working for Kevin Yeager at the time, and Robert would continually pull his makeup off, and it just created more trouble. He thought he was helping, but it wasn't. And always, we were shooting sometimes 6-7 days a week. And by the end of the week, Robert would come in with like tears in his skin, and I'd have to put little Band-Aids and stuff over those little wounds.
Because he was going too fast.
Yeah, he just would pull it off. He's like, "Did I help you?" And I'm like, "No, you're making it worse." Because then, you know, there's all these little bits of foam all over his face. And I'm like, "Robert, it's easier if you just leave it and let me just remove it," you know. So, but
the issue I had was, and again, this was because of the extent to which the Prosaid was just clung to me, was it have to actually use Q-tips in the oil to kind of scrape, and that used to kind of, you know, almost graze my skin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the skin is very soft around here.
Well,
and then for days and days afterwards, picking clumps of glue and paint.
Sure. Yeah, you find stuff everywhere.
Backs of the back.
I mean, again, like, you know, and I think can't remember if we tell this story in the book, because we interviewed Robert Englund and Kevin Yeager and all this, but when we were doing Nightmare 4, the hours were insane. So the studio got us a room, you know, rooms at the local hotel in Santa Clarita. And so, you know, I had a room one night, Robert had a room one night, and then we checked out. Then the next night I went back, and so did Robert, but we had different rooms. Well, I was in the shower, and there was a piece of Freddie's ear in the shower. And I was like, oh, this must have been Robert's room last night. So I called Robert, and I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, I couldn't, you didn't get it off. And I'm like, because you just leave, you just run out the door. And so, yeah, so there was a piece of Freddie, which then, of course, alerted me to the fact that they really didn't clean the room. If
not good housekeeping there.
Yeah,
if they're leaving an ear in the shower.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, look, there's Freddy Krueger's ear in the shower. And I'm like,
on the other hand, they may have been cleaning the room. They may have got as far as the shower.
It's true.
Ear lying in the shower and gone no further.
Yeah, it was very Lynchian. It's like, yes, that's an ear, you know, but
you could have got to work. You could have got back to your hotel and found it full of FBI guys.
Well, yeah, we've had that too. But I mean, again, once you get a chance to read this book, everybody, you'll hear all these great stories. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of great stories like this. And Robert Englund, of course, brings so much. He's such a great storyteller and always was, and always is, rather. But people like Christopher Tucker, who did The Elephant Man, talking about his time on Star Wars, which I never knew he worked on Star Wars, and Carl Fullerton and from Silence of the Lambs, and John Caglione Jr. from his career and working on Dick Tracy, and it's really filled with really great things, and like I said, other perspectives. Like we interviewed Fred Raskin, who is Quentin Tarantino's editor, as well as James Gunn. And he talks a lot about how working, having to cut and edit makeup effects and how that all works, and how, because he's got a good basis for that too, and understands, and he's a film fan, and what James Gunn loves about makeup effects and what works and doesn't. So the book really gives casts a very wide net over the industry, and obviously specifically makeup effects, but we talk a lot about a lot of other things too, and there's some psychology of doing makeup and wearing makeup, and it's really filled with a lot. I mean, Marshall did a great job editing all this and putting this together, and the graphic design, we had our fingers, and sometimes people, and this, Doug, because you wrote a book, people are like, oh, I'm going to write a book. Well, that sounds great, but it's really hard. And then you have editors and graphic designers that you have to deal with. And sometimes you're not seeing eye to eye, and in my brain, I know exactly what this looks like. So does Marshall. But then, we get comps and I'm like, it's not quite there. So I just take it and edit it and cut it all back together and send it back digitally. And I'm like, no, this is what we're thinking. And, so we worked, our hands are deep in this project. It's not like, oh, we just did it and somebody else wrote it and put it together. Marshall and I literally had our hands on every single page.
Yeah, every single letter.
Everything.
I mean, we spent a couple of months more doing just the captions and just
it was one thing after another, and then all the photo credit, all that.
It's so gorgeously illustrated. The pictures are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, the pictures are great. The design of the book, like each chapter has its own color, which we wanted to do, and come up with really interesting things. And we mocked up a lot of artwork, and it's going to be great. And I hope everybody.
I'd like to. I'm going to ask David to put the page up relating to Anthony Hopkins and. Cool. Because I'm fascinated by this. It would have been, particularly if Steph had been with me. I don't want you telling tales out of school, but you would have had to tell us that Tony was only 2 steps away from sainthood, because Steph worships at the altar of Anthony Hopkins, and has done for a very, very long time, as a man as well as an actor.
Yes.
But these images are wonderful, and this is a different kind of thing, because we've talked a lot of the makeups we've talked about are fantasy makeup.
Right. Yes.
This is recreating a person on another person's face and head.
Yes. And what we call it, my wife coined the phrase, a portrait. It's not a likeness makeup.
Yes.
It's a portrait. And with that specific movie with Hitchcock, which Anthony Hopkins starred in, and I got to do that makeup on him, myself and another makeup artist, Peter Montagna. And it was a dream project. And working with Tony was a dream. He is one of the most wonderful, kind, giving partners you could ever have. I mean, that was a partnership. And he made it very clear to production, he would never, once he walked into our room and started the process, he was not leaving till he was 100%. And it wasn't like I have to be Hitchcock. It's like, I don't want anybody seeing me half done, or I don't want anybody seeing me if I'm not in my suit. And so Tony would finish his makeup, and then he would get dressed. Julie Weiss, who's our costume designer, would have the heavy set suit and put his costume on, all that. Tony would then leave, and he would live in that makeup. And he was so careful and so kind. And it was, he worked 12 hours, and it was a 12-hour day for Tony from portal to portal, meaning that, you know, the time he left the house till the time he got home, they had a 12-hour period. And, you know, every time I did a test prior to shooting, Tony was here, came to this room, and I did the makeup test. And you don't normally get that. Sometimes production will be like, oh, we're going to bring a double, but a double doesn't tell you anything. You need to do it on the actor. Plus, you need to know, you have to get the feedback. And Tony,
yeah, he wanted to be
out, absolutely. And he would say, Howard, you know, what time do you want me? I'm like, well, what time do you want to come? He's like, Howard, I'll
up to the point we can. I don't know how easily people can see this, but in the text there, and I imagine ordinarily this must be a makeup artist's nightmare, that you say that obviously Hitchcock had the
lip,
bottom lip, and you had created that with a makeup sit on Hopkins's bottom lip. The night before you start work, he calls you and says, I don't want
to do it. Well, we went around in circles on a bunch of different things, and yeah, Tony was like, we tested it. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. And the night before he called me, he's like, hey, Howard, I think I want to forgo the lip. And I'm like, oh, all right. And the lip also hit an edge, because the piece was what we call horseshoe, and it actually broke underneath his cheekbones and down, and then across here, and then all that. He had a nose tip and ear tips, or earlobes rather. And I said, okay, well, let's try it. And I didn't put the lower lip on. Nobody knew the difference. And I made sure Pete and I applied it really tight, and it worked great. And Tony was much happier. You know, the other thing too is that Tony has beautiful blue eyes, and Alfred Hitchcock had brown eyes. So I kind of run around in circles for a little bit trying to get Tony to wear lenses. And he's like, I don't want to do it. I think this looks fine. And I'm like, Tony, let me just make a pair of lenses. Let's put them in and take a look. And he's like, well, I don't think they're going to be, they matter, but okay. Put the lenses, and he went, oh my God, those are great. We have to use these. And I'm like, yes, that's what I've been saying the whole time. But again, that was the give and take, you know. And Tony trusted me, I trusted him. And we shot that movie in 35 days. Tony worked every single day. Wow. And he was wonderful. I love the man. He was wonderful. You know, he called me to come do a couple days on Thor 2 reshoots, and we just sat and laughed, and I like made him up as Odin and put his little mustache on and all that in his beard, and we just chuckled, and because he has a very wicked sense of humor as well. He's an amazing mimic, and we would be sitting on set, and he would start making noises like bird noises, and people on the set were like, where's that bird? And it was Tony throwing his voice as a pigeon. And people were spending hours looking for the pigeon on the set, but it was Tony the whole time sitting in the chair, like, you know, and just throwing everybody off. So, but you know,
that's great. Also, I mean, you know, with an actor of his stature, you know, he can bring whatever attitude he wants to bring, and you will have to dance around him, because he is Sir Anthony fucking Hopkins. Thank you very much.
He is, but he
never brings that with him.
No, he's a team player. And, you know, something I learned from Tony, he said, and I say it all the time, and this is very true, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. And Tony is very, very kind. But if you on the line, if you cross that line, you're going to get the wrath. And it's something I say quite often to people now, because some people will like, Howard's so great, he'll do whatever. And I'm like, hold on a second. So, but it's really you know, it was a pleasure working with him. I would love to do it again, you know, and yeah, he's one of those guys. So that's great. I think Marshall's just about ready for bed.
Yes.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning in London, I think.
I just noticed as you moved your head then that I am actually. Am I looking at an Oscar behind your head?
Oh yeah, yeah, right there.
And is that a BAFTA next to it?
That's a BAFTA and an Oscar and an Iron Giant. Yes.
Yes. That's not bad, is it?
No, it's all right. And then there's an Emmy over there and a Saturn.
I see the Emmy.
Emmy up there and 2 Saturn Awards down there.
Nice. Keep them carefully dusted.
Yeah, you know, something like that. It's all good. That's all gravy, though. You know, that's not why I got into this. You know, and winning awards is great. It's wonderful, but working and enjoying it is more important to me.
Well, it is, of course, a fundamental foolishness, the idea of having a competition between performances or between makeup.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Is therefore in some way better than that makeup that didn't win is obviously ludicrous. And
yeah, the word like best is a very difficult thing.
But the moment you got that statuette in your hands,
it was pretty damn cool.
I would imagine. And
it's still super cool. So, you know, I mean, I'm very, very honored and I love it. And it's a great thing. It's just, you know, it's something you don't expect. And it's gravy. And I'm very thankful for it. But I'm more thankful for my career and my life and my friends. That's what's more important to me.
Well, but gravy is good. I'm a big fan of gravy.
Gravy's good too.
Well, gentlemen, I think I've taken up an awful lot of your time.
All good. Thank you so much.
Is there anything we have not touched on about the book?
Marshall, I mean, we're going to start doing some book signings in September, which will be great. We've got a couple lining up in September. I know we're going to end up doing Dark Delicacies September 18th.
Say hello to Del from.
I will say hello to Del from 3 to 5 on September 18th. And you know, what'll be fun is that we'll invite everybody who's in town to come and contribute and sit at the tables with us and sign books, which will be great.
You need a lot of tables.
Well, that's what Del's opening up the second. He said, I talked to him last night. He's like, I'm going to open up the second space, because I think we're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So, but you know, we're working towards putting together a book signing at the Academy of Motion Picture Museum, which is amazing and spectacular, and whatever else we can get out there. But so far it seems great. Pre-sales have been wonderful on Amazon and other book venues. But yeah, no, but we thank you very, very much for inviting us. It's great. We enjoyed it. And yeah, and thank you for being a part of the book, because you are essential to it. You're an iconic actor that brought to life several iconic characters. So we're very happy you're part of this book.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm kind of gazing at this thing through the computer screen, and it looks gorgeous, and I've no doubt that the end product is going to be. So, publication date is September
1st in the UK and 6th in the United States.
Okay, all right, cool.
Thanks,
so,
Doug.
Everybody, look out for that. Marshall and Howard, thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It was fun.
Yes. Thanks, Doug. Take care. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
And thank you to all of you who have been watching. This will be slightly weird for you because I'm sitting here talking, and when this goes out as live, Steph and I will be in the live chat talking to people in the chat.
Right.
It hasn't happened yet, about what we're talking about now, and have been for most of the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, man.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night. We'll see you soon.
Everybody else.
Marshall, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, sorry I had to disappear. I
No,
got
that's all right.
I just got COVID for the first time like a month ago, and it's still left me with a bit of a cough.
Oh,
and
really?
It's just like I just had to go off and have a bit of a cough. I thought better to do it in another room to basically.
Did you have it bad?
I didn't have it bad. It was like having the flu for a couple of days, and then it was just a week of waiting to show up negative.
Right.
But I just get this tickle, usually at night, which really annoys. Actually, my wife is like super patient with it. It's like for some reason, it's like when I'm walking around, it's okay. Then when I sit down, it starts to irritate a bit. And then when I lie down, that's when it's just like I have to cough. And it's like the most annoying time, like in the middle of the night.
Well, we forgive you for running away.
Yes, absolutely.
Stayed and coughed with us. We wouldn't mind.
Are we going to get Doug a t-shirt, Howard?
Oh, believe me, don't worry. That's going to go out as soon as they come in. Everybody's going to get their swag. 100%. Yeah. Everybody gets swag, Doug. You get a bunch of cool stuff.
Well, finally, once again, thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Right. Goodbye. And thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.